Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you as part of our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and distributed live stream. By entering this virtual meeting room, you give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Vienna Live with Simeon Moore and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please go to the LinkedIn live video feed, the link to which I've just placed in the chat room. Tonight, our featured guest is Mauricio Morales, a jazz bassist and composer whose latest album, 7 Days, will be the subject of tonight's conversation. Mauricio, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It is truly a pleasure.
Mauricio, so tell us a little bit about where you come from, how your musical tastes were formed, and why you decided to become a jazz bassist and composer.
Sure. I was born and raised in Mexico City. I am, as of right now, the only musician in the family. However, both my parents had artistic inclinations of sorts. Like my mom, for example, she's a watercolor painter. That's what she does. My dad, not exactly. He's not an artist himself. However, he has always had uh, quite a passion for music. So since I was very little, I was always sharing music with him, I guess. I guess the fact that I was sharing that with my father always was like really important and made me feel really close to music in general. At this point, I mean, the music that I was listening to was the Beatles or Pink Floyd or The Doors or music from his time that he really enjoyed. That's timeless, also, you know. And I knew that I loved the music very early on. However, I didn't start playing until a little later when I was 14 years old. The reason I play the bass specifically is probably the same story that a lot of bass players share, which is, you know, I didn't really know what that even was. I just thought I wanted to play guitar, and I mentioned that to my friend, my closest friend from elementary school, and he told me, "Well, I already have a guitar. If we want to play together, you should play the bass, and then we just need to find the drummer, and then we have a band, right?" I was like, "Okay, great. That sounds amazing." At this point, I didn't know what a bass was or what it sounded like. I just said, like, I just wanted to play music with people. That's all that really mattered to me. So I ended up playing bass, and I ended up completely falling in love with it. Of course, at this time, I was playing mostly the music that, you know, teenagers were listening to. I was listening to punk pop, like Blink 182 or things like this, and kind of started discovering my my own taste, right? Because like before that, I was mostly uh, experiencing the music that my dad loved. Now I needed to discover the music that I loved, you know? So it started kind of with like, I guess like mainstream music from when I was younger. It started kind of moving into heavier music. I was definitely very much into heavy metal and like all sorts of metal to be more realistic. And the truth is that the way that I got into jazz specifically was because of my commitment, I guess, to my craftsmanship, right? Like to the instrument and to music in general, because I knew that I wanted to be a better musician. And I guess becoming a better musician is a matter of gaining constantly a higher and higher level of expression, right? And jazz provided the idea of that, right? It is freedom, complete freedom. Ideally, you have the capacity of playing music without any limitation whatsoever. And I wanted that. I would be lying if I said that I fell in love the first time I heard jazz. That's not what happened. I mean, it happened little by little. For example, from having been listening to heavier music, I started eventually listening to Chicoria Electric Band or Tribal Tech or Mike Stern or like the more fusion things that were a little closer to what I was used to. In fact, I remember to this day the first time I listened to Coltrane, I didn't understand anything, you know? And I look at it now and it's like, wow, this is some of the most beautiful things there is, you know? It's like, I guess because of where I come from, since jazz was not really something that was around me at all, it took a little bit of time for me to really gain the capacity to understand what it really has to offer. And that's pretty much it. You know, it's like I was really interested in growing as a musician, and like I think the depth that jazz music has to offer is like unmatched. And to this day, I'm still a student of that music genre. You know, like I'm still practicing all the time. I'm still learning all the time. I'm still trying to get better. And like the more I get involved in it, the more I realize that it is really truly never ending.
Wow. So the passion really, really shines through. Let's listen to a next track. This is Under the Magic Tree. I'd like to point out to our participants that Mauricio specifically asked me to play that portion of the song Under the Magic Tree, in which we can hear a heavy metal guitar, in other words, distorted sound with very virtuoso playing and strong emotions. Mauricio, tell us, what is 7 Days about? We saw the album front cover. It seems like it's going from day to night, from part of a person to a whole person in the daylight. Tell us about this album.
Oh, you were paying attention to the cover as well, because there's definitely meaning in that too. Anyway, yeah, 7 Days is a very particular project because of the way that it originated. It didn't really start as a project that was meant to be recorded at all. It was an exercise, only an exercise, you know. I wanted to write. I'm always want to grow. I always want to become a better bass player, and I always want to become a better writer. And when I started working on this, I decided that I wanted to try to write a piece of music in its entirety uh, every day for a number of days. You know, it's like I didn't know it was going to be 7 days. It just turned out that seven was a magic number, because that's as far as I could go before I thought that I had no ideas left. And so that's how it started. You know, I would write a song and finish it every day for 7 days. I guess in this particular case, the music was um, very emotionally charged, because at the time, you know, I was experiencing a very particular episode in my life. You know, at this point, I have been living in the United States for 12 years. When I wrote this music, I think that was 1.5 years ago or something like that, and I was actually back home in Mexico. I was stuck there because I was, as any, international musician knows, in order to be able to work in the United States, we need to go through a very thorough process in order to get an artist visa. I already had one, but when I was renewing it, for very strange reasons, it was denied. So suddenly my life was completely upside down. I was very uncertain in regards to my future. Was I gonna be able to come back to the United States? Was I gonna have to go back home and work in Mexico? Was I going to find a new music hub somewhere else in the world? And if that was the case, where would that be, right? So it was a moment of uncertainty. Uh, I was experiencing a lot of different emotions, because there was of course, the sense of rejection, feeling like I have been living here and now I'm being, expelled from from the place where I have built my community and and where I have planned my musical endeavors, right? So there was a lot going on, and I feel that because of that, this exercise ended up turning into more of a musical journal, as if I was like writing a journal with music. So I thought that there was something really special about that, because it is completely unpolished, right? So in music, you cannot really lie. I mean, you not when you're trying to finish a song in a day, right? It's like, because you can really come back and work on it, like, and kind of change the way that you're presenting it, and there's something really cool about that, because it's very raw and very vulnerable. And at the time, I didn't think much about it. I just thought, like, okay, it was cool to have a this exercise. I wrote some music. I'm gonna perform it with some people, right? After a couple of months, when I managed to solve my problem, which thankfully I was able to solve, I put a band together, and we performed the music live at a jazz club named Sun First here in Los Angeles, California. And everybody in the band had a great time, including myself, and like a couple of the band members eventually asked me, like, hey, are you planning to make this a record? I mean, the concept is interesting. It is cohesive. It makes sense. I mean, it would be cool to do that. And at the time I was thinking, like, well, I don't know. We already played the music live, I mean, we already kind of gave it away, I guess. So would it wasn't, I was just being a little ridiculous, I guess. But after that, after playing the music live one more time, then I thought like, no, okay, this is cool. Like I think the synergy with the musicians and the music itself, I think is strong enough to be something, and I guess, as an artist, you want the music that you put out there to be meaningful, and I thought that this was very meaningful in the sense that it really originated from a very particular moment in my life, in which I experienced something, and that is very much captured within the music, right? So there is that. And in regards to the album cover, it's kind of that, right? It is like um basically what it is, it starts in the dark. Um and it feels like every day you're moving forward. Right. I mean, not everything in life feels like we're moving forward, but in this particular case, it did, because I was, you know, first of all, kind of coming up to the realization that it wasn't the end of the world, that I would be able to make music wherever I was, and I would find great musicians wherever I was. So when I was, in a way, I was finding the light, like there is a little sun there in a through a very dark time, I guess, because that's how it felt at the time. And yeah, that's kind of the story behind the album.
Let's listen now then to A Ghostly Vision. Mauricio, now tell us briefly about putting this band together. You said this is such an important, dear album to you as a person. When you got back to the United States, then to Los Angeles, to your home, how did you know, okay, I want to play with these musicians? What do you look for in a musician? How do you know I want that person to play on my album?
Well, most importantly, I feel like I look for sensitivity in a musician. I want a musician that's aware of their surroundings and will be able to adapt and focus on the big picture being the music, the overall, result of what we're aiming for. Obviously, I really care for artistry. I think this kind of music is something that requires a lot of creativity and confidence as well, right? So I feel like I like to play with musicians that, first of all, are authentic. They know what their voices are and embrace that, and at the same time are sensitive to everybody else, where we don't have like all of that ego going on around in which anybody needs to be the focal point or anything like that. I prefer it when we're truly working together as a team. Um, as far as putting together this particular band, um, it is a combination of my friends that I made in college, as well as friends that I made here in Los Angeles. I went to college in Boston, Massachusetts, and more than half the band went to the same school. So it's like Ido Meshulam, the trombone player, Edmar Colon, saxophone player, Jungkook Kim, JK, the drummer, and myself, we all went to college together. So we all have a lot of experience having played a lot of different music, and I also feel like there's a connection on a personal level as well, because we met when we were young. We had nice conversations. We partied together. We went through like growing pains together. Like we experienced the transition of moving into a city, and everybody went into different places. But like, the transition makes you grow, right? So I feel like playing with great musicians is amazing, and playing with friends is even more amazing. So it is really cool to be able to share that with friends that also happen to be some of the best musicians in the world, you know? And then Horace Bray and Luca Mendoza, they're both uh, based in LA. Horace was in the East Coast for a little while as well. He was in New York for a while, but like he moved to LA around the same time that I did. And Luca was born and raised in Los Angeles, right? So I guess like the band itself like represents like the culmination of my musical growth since I moved to the United States, because it has like both, like I said, people from my Boston times as well as people from my LA times, and I don't know, I feel like that combination also brings a little more of um a cohesive sound in regards to how I am today, because I am both the musician that lives in Boston as well as the musician that lives in LA right now, which are two completely different cities that have different things to offer from a musical standpoint.
So let's listen now to Thursday Solitude. This
Mhm.
is halfway through the album, halfway through the week. Excuse me, that was not Thursday Solitude. Here's Thursday Solitude. So this brings us to our philosophical portion of the conversation that I know everyone looks forward to every week. And the title is Learning from Saint Ignatius. So, Mauricio, according to James Martin of the Society of Jesus, also known as the Jesuits, on July 31st in 1556, St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order, died at the Jesuit residence in Rome after decades of serving the Jesuits, the Catholic Church, and the whole people of God. He was at various points of his life a soldier, a mystic, a beggar, a pilgrim, a student, a priest, a fundraiser, a spiritual director, and an administrator. As it was for nearly all of the saints, life was tough. and confusing. When he was a young man, he thought he was going to be a great soldier, but a cannonball shattered his leg and ended his military career. Later, he thought that he should live like an ascetic, but he found it harmed his health and he had to start eating better. He thought he would move to the Holy Land, but he was kicked out of the Holy Land. At each juncture, Ignatius had to discern what to do when it seemed like his path was blocked. As a result, he is sometimes called the patron saint of Plan B. So tell us, when you think about this young jazz musician who was turned away from his home, who was told you can't return to where you'd planned on spending your artistic life and with your friends. What do you think now? What role did music play? What role can music play in bringing one's life into fulfillment and completion?
Well, I mean, in this particular regard, I mean, music was in the forefront, not only because of the support that it provides me during difficult times, but also because it is basically what drives me in regards to my decision making. I mean, the reason I moved to the United States, for example, was in order to play music. Um, I want to surround myself by the greatest musicians I can find. And I resonate with a lot of the music that's going on around here. Now, how was music present other than, I guess, the logistics of it in regards to my decision making? I mean, I don't know. It's a really good question. It is difficult to say. I think music is basically all I think about it from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. Inevitably, it is not that I want to, it's just that that's what I'm doing all the time, It's like, and that's kind of how I think and how I, you know, also express myself. Plus, it's also how I make a living, right? So, I mean, that's always always there. Um, in regards to the concept of a plan B and the idea of moving forward no matter what happens, of course, music was also in the forefront because, like, wherever I would go would be dependent on where I would find a hub that would allow to find stimulation as an artist, because for me, the most important part in regards to where I base myself is where I can find the peers that will push me to grow the most, right? So wherever it is that I would go, whether it is back to Mexico, whether it is to Germany, whether it is to France, whether it is to wherever, it's like it would be a matter of, like, where do I think I will be surrounded by I don't even want to say the best musicians because I mean, at this point, it's not such a thing. It's like, but like, where will I find myself surrounded by musicians that I resonate with the most? That I feel will work well with my vision, as well as will also nurture my artistry by sharing their own perspective, So I had a lot of thoughts about that. Um, as much as I love being in Mexico, especially because of my family, of course that's great, but like, there's amazing music going on there. Seriously. There's wonderful songwriters and a lot of, beautiful things that are going on there. So, like, I don't mean in any way to minimize what Mexico has to offer from an artistic standpoint. It's just that I personally feel like what I'm looking for is not really there. So I was mostly thinking, if things would have gone, south, I would have probably moved to Germany most likely. since I speak the language, and there's a lot of wonderful things. However, I wouldn't make any decision without first spending a little bit of time in the potential places and seeing what's going on there, which at the time I hadn't as much, So, but thankfully everything worked out. So there was no need for the plan B.
So are there any questions or comments? Anybody have any thoughts? Dr. Davis does. Hi, Dr. Davis.
Now you should hear me. Is that right? Good.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you, Mauricio. That was an excellent, all your commentaries were very moving and very understandable. And you have a knack with the English language. And
Oh, thank you.
you're really obviously pretty good with languages between German, Spanish, and English. And I
Right.
don't know what else. But
That's it. Those are the only ones.
oh, okay. Well, I enjoyed your stories. I enjoyed all your comments, really. I think you should write a book.
Maybe I will eventually. Why not? I'm
Let,
still
let,
young.
let Sim know if you do, because he'll keep me in touch.
Absolutely.
Okay? Keep up the good
Yes.
work.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Dr. Davis.
Yeah.
So let's listen to our final track of the night. This is The Paradox.
I believe we started with that one actually.
Oh, we did. Okay. Which one should we end with then?
Let's maybe Monday, the first one.
Monday,
That would be
sure.
yeah.
Final thoughts, Mauricio. What do you wish all of us today and tomorrow when we listen to this album? What should we take away?
What to take away? I mean, especially with instrumental music that is so abstract. It's basically something that you create, you live out in the world, and then eventually everybody has their own journey when they listen to it. Because even if you have a very clear idea of what it is that you're trying to express, because of what it is, no words, no nothing, it's like it becomes something very personal. So basically what I would love with this record and with any of the records that I've released, is for people to find, their own journey within that music and hopefully enjoy it. And hopefully, it's really funny to say like sing the melodies or whatever, but like, hey, if they're memorable and you feel like humming them or whatever, that would be amazing, but I also don't expect anybody to, but ideally that would be the dream, right?
Let's see how we can stay in touch with Mauricio. It's through Instagram, and it is instagram.com/Mauricio Morales Music. And people can reach out to you here, Mauricio, and ask you about buying the album and upcoming concerts.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I use Instagram for all of my, for all the promotional material, and like I keep people updated in regards to my shows and my future projects. And I tend to be pretty good at responding to whoever is interested in my music as well. So whatever, it also keeps it more personal, because I can be talking a little more closely to the people that enjoy my music, which is really nice.
So feel free to reach out to Mauricio with your comments or questions. If you'd like to know about his upcoming shows and about buying the album, 7 Days, it's Instagram.com/Mauricio Morales Music. Thank you so very much to Mauricio Morales.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's see what's coming up next week on Vienna Live. As always, you can find information about upcoming shows at www.simonmora.com. And while you're at it, you can sign up for the Friday individualized greeting that I send out with exclusive insights into the upcoming shows and my thoughts on them. This Wednesday, we have The Colors of My Life, a Cy Coleman songbook. When the Manhattan Transfer performed its final concert at Los Angeles Walt Disney Concert Hall last December, the event brought to a close one of the most storied chapters in vocal jazz history. Several months later, founding member Janice Siegel described her mindset as kind of mourning, while pianist and longtime musical director Yaron Gerskovsky admitted a deep sense of sadness. Not that the pair was at a loss for the next step on their musical journeys. Over drinks at the bar following a transfer concert several years earlier, Siegel and Jarzkowski discovered that both had worked with the revered songwriter Cy Coleman, Gershkovsky as a vocal arranger for the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical City of Angels, Siegel as part of the all-star vocal ensemble for Coleman's final collaboration with lyricist Alan and Marilyn Bergman at the Kennedy Center. That conversation soon evolved into a full-fledged project, The Colors of My Life, a Cy Coleman songbook, available now from the Club 44 label, features the duo's spirited interpretations of 10 favorite Coleman compositions. Come welcome Giannis and Yaron to our show. As always, all information about upcoming shows can be found at www.simonmora.com. That's The Colors of My Life, a Cole Simon songbook next Wednesday. Once again, thank you so very much to Mauricio Morales. Thank you to Vienna Live sponsors Victoria and Frederick Mulligan. Thank you to Abby Moser, Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet, and Mary Schlesinger for their support of this show. Thanks to my cousin Mike, a marketer from Layer App. If you're an architect or an engineer, they have a really cool tool you should check out. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile from Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, California. Goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.